The moment my stepson's eyes met mine, I knew he'd seen something no child should ever witness, and that my sister's betrayal ran deeper than blood. Have you ever felt your world collapse in slow motion? That moment when everything you believed about your family shatters like glass? That was my Tuesday afternoon. I never thought I'd be telling this story. Never imagined I'd be sitting here, recounting how the two people I trusted most, my husband Mark and my sister Jenna, destroyed our family with secrets and lies. But here I am. And if you've ever had that gut feeling, that quiet voice whispering something isn't right, don't ignore it. Trust me, I ignored mine for too long. If you've ever felt betrayed by someone you loved completely, comment "trust broken" below, and stay with me. Because this story isn't just about betrayal, it's about what happens when a child becomes the bearer of unbearable truth. 5 years ago, I married Mark. He was charming, attentive, and came with a beautiful bonus: his son, Ethan. Building our blended family wasn't easy, but when Ethan finally called me Mom last spring, I thought we'd made it. I thought we were whole. My sister Jenna had always been my rock. When she needed a place to stay temporarily, we welcomed her with open arms. I never questioned why her visits to our house became more frequent, why she volunteered to watch Ethan so often, or why conversations between her and Mark seemed to stop whenever I walked into a room. Not until that morning in the kitchen, when Mark's phone chimed with a message, and he flipped it face down so quickly that something cold settled in my stomach. I tried to dismiss that feeling, told myself I was being paranoid. Mark had been distant lately, working late, taking calls in another room, but he had a demanding job. And Jenna, she was family. My only sister. But the signs kept appearing, like unwelcome guests that refused to leave. That Friday night, we hosted a dinner party. I walked into the kitchen to find Mark leaning close to Jenna, their heads nearly touching. They jumped apart when I entered, Jenna's laugh a little too bright, Mark's smile not quite reaching his eyes. "Just sharing an old joke," Jenna said, busying herself with the wine glasses. "Inside joke," Mark added, brushing past me without meeting my gaze. Inside joke. 2 words that shouldn't hurt, yet they cut deep. When did my husband and sister develop their own private language? That night, I watched them across the table. The way Jenna touched Mark's arm when she laughed, how his eyes found hers when he told a story. Small moments, nearly invisible to our guests but blinding to me. Later, as I loaded the dishwasher, I heard their voices on the back porch. I moved toward the window, the night air cool through the screen. "We need to be more careful," Jenna whispered. "She's not stupid." "I know," Mark replied, "but I can't." He stopped when the floorboard creaked beneath my foot. They both turned, faces illuminated by porch lights, expressions shifting too quickly from guilt to casual smiles. That night, I couldn't sleep. Mark's steady breathing beside me felt like a lie. The ceiling fan turned overhead, each rotation counting seconds of a marriage I suddenly questioned. The investigation began with a notebook, small, blue, hidden beneath my winter sweaters. I documented everything: dates, times, behaviors that felt wrong. April 15, Mark's phone rings during dinner. Sees caller ID, takes call in office. Returns 20 minutes later looking flushed. April 17, Jenna cancels our lunch date. Claims migraine. Mark's meeting was also canceled. April 20th, found receipt for 2 coffees in Mark's coat. He was supposedly alone. I became a detective in my own home, noting patterns no wife should need to track. When Mark showered, I checked his phone, finding nothing suspicious because he'd started deleting texts. When Jenna visited, I watched how their bodies oriented toward each other, like plants seeking sun. One Tuesday, I called Mark's office during a late meeting he'd mentioned. "I'm sorry, he left at 5, his assistant said. "Is everything okay?" I drove past Jenna's apartment, empty parking spot, darkened windows. My hands trembled on the steering wheel as I circled the block twice, hoping I was wrong, knowing I wasn't. That weekend, I created an excuse to check Jenna's phone while she showered at our house. Nothing in her texts to Mark. They were too smart for that. But her search history betrayed her. How to end an affair with brother-in-law, and telling sister about relationship with husband. My stomach dropped through the floor. The bathroom door opened down the hall. I placed her phone exactly as I'd found it, heart hammering against my ribs. The weeks blurred together, each day bringing fresh pain as I gathered evidence like sharp-edged puzzle pieces. I checked credit card statements, finding a hotel charge Mark claimed was a business lunch. I noted how Jenna suddenly knew where items belonged in our kitchen, as if she'd spent hours there without me. I began having coffee with Mark's ex-wife, Caroline, something I'd never done before. "Ethan seems quiet lately," I mentioned casually on our third meeting. Caroline nodded, stirring her latte. "He told me he's been staying up late. Says he hears grown-ups talking after you go to bed." My throat tightened. "Which grown-ups? Your husband and your sister," I assumed. Her eyes met mine. "Is everything okay, Rachel?" I lied, said everything was fine. Then came a moment of doubt, a beautiful brief respite from suspicion. Our anniversary arrived, and Mark planned an elaborate dinner. He seemed present, attentive, his eyes warm when he looked at me. "I've been distant," he admitted over dessert. "Work has been intense, but that's no excuse. I miss us." For one evening, I believed him. I wanted to believe him. His hand in mine felt like coming home after a long journey. The next morning, I found an earring between our couch cushions, small silver with a turquoise stone. Not mine. Jenna had worn them last week. My investigation reached its breaking point when I discovered Mark had purchased 2 plane tickets to Vancouver, a trip he hadn't mentioned. The reservation included a king bed. The dates aligned perfectly with when Jenna had mentioned visiting a college friend on the West Coast. I confronted neither of them. Instead, I waited, gathering strength for what would come. But fate had its own timeline. That Thursday afternoon, thunder rolled across gray skies as I prepared dinner. Ethan had been quiet for days, his usual chatter replaced by thoughtful silence and worried glances. When he came into the kitchen, rain drumming against the windows matched the storm in his eyes. "Mom," he said softly, "the word is still new between us. Can I talk to you about something?" His fingers twisted the hem of his t-shirt, his gaze fixed on the floor. Something in his posture made my heart race. "Always," I said, setting down the knife I'd been using to chop vegetables. "I saw," he began, then stopped. Swallowed hard. "I saw Dad and Aunt Jenna." The kitchen seemed to tilt sideways. I gripped the counter to steady myself. "What did you see, Ethan?" My voice sounded far away, even to my own ears. His eyes finally met mine, filled with confusion and something worse, a child's understanding of adult betrayal. "They were in Dad's office last night when you went to the book club. They were kissing. Not like family kisses." His voice cracked. "Dad saw me in the doorway. He said I shouldn't tell you, that it would hurt you, that sometimes grown-ups have complicated feelings." The room spun around me, my knees weakened, but I couldn't collapse, not in front of Ethan, who looked so frightened, so brave. "And then," Ethan continued, pulling something from his pocket, "I found this." He handed me a folded note, Jenna's handwriting immediately recognizable. "Meet me tomorrow. We need to figure out how to tell her. I can't keep living this double life. I love you too much." The note trembled in my hand, written proof of what I'd suspected for months. I looked at Ethan, this child caught between adults who should have protected him from exactly this kind of pain. "Thank you for telling me," I managed to say, pulling him into a hug. "You did nothing wrong." I felt his small body relax slightly against mine, his confession unburdening him while simultaneously crushing me. "Are you mad at me?" he whispered against my shoulder. "No, honey. Never at you." I pulled back, meeting his eyes. "I'm proud of you for telling the truth, even when it was hard." Rain lashed against the windows as Ethan and I sat at the kitchen table. I asked him gently for details. When he first noticed, what he'd seen, what his father had said afterward. "Dad made me promise not to tell," Ethan said, tears welling. "He said it would break up our family. But keeping the secret feels worse." The irony cut deep. Mark forcing our child to shoulder the weight of adult betrayal while claiming to protect our family. "Sometimes," I told Ethan, "the bravest thing we can do is speak the truth, even when it hurts." After Ethan went upstairs, I sat alone in the kitchen, the note crushed in my fist. Physical pain radiated from my chest, as if something had cracked open inside me. I couldn't breathe properly, couldn't think clearly. 5 years of marriage, 32 years of sisterhood. All of it was built on sand that was now washing away. I called my closest friend, Lisa. "Can Ethan stay with you tonight?" My voice sounded hollow, unrecognizable. "Of course," she said. "What's happening?" I'll explain later. I just need him somewhere safe while I handle something. I waited until Ethan was safely at Lisa's house before texting both Mark and Jenna. I need to see you both. Our house. 8 p.m. It's important. Then I prepared. I gathered the evidence I'd collected. Phone records, receipts, my journal entries, and now, Jenna's note. I placed them in a folder on the coffee table. Next to it, I set Ethan's school notebook, open to a drawing he'd made weeks ago. Stick figures labeled Dad and Aunt Jenna, with hearts around them, and a smaller figure watching from a doorway. The house felt cavernous as I waited, each tick of the clock echoing through empty rooms. At 7:58, headlights swept across the living room wall. 2 cars pulling into the driveway, they'd arrived separately. One last attempt at deception. The front door opened. Mark entered first, confusion etched on his face. Jenna followed, eyes darting nervously around the room. "Where's Ethan?" Mark asked. "Somewhere safe," I replied, my voice steadier than I felt. "Sit down, both of you." They exchanged a glance, that private conspiratorial look I'd noticed for months but dismissed, before sitting on opposite ends of the sofa. "What's going on?" Jenna asked, attempting a smile that didn't reach her eyes. I remained standing, unwilling to join them, to pretend this was a normal family discussion. "Ethan saw you," I said simply. "He told me everything." The color drained from Mark's face. Jenna's hand flew to her mouth. "Rachel, Mark began. I held up my hand. "Don't. I've been watching you both for months. I know." "It's not what you think," Jenna said, tears already forming. "Always quick to cry, my sister, a defense mechanism I'd once found endearing." "Then what is it?" I asked, pointing to the evidence on the table. "Explain the hotel charges, the secret meetings, the lies." Mark leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "We were going to tell you." "When?" "After your trip to Vancouver next month?" Their shocked expressions confirmed what the travel itinerary had already told me. "How long?" I asked the question that had burned inside me for months. They exchanged another look, silently deciding who would answer. 8 months. Mark finally said. 8 months. While I'd been building a relationship with Ethan, planning our future, they'd been dismantling it behind my back. "It started as friendship," Jenna offered, as if that somehow lessened the betrayal. "We never meant." "Stop." My voice cut through the room like a blade. "You're my sister, the one person who was supposed to protect me, and you, Mark." I turned to my husband. "You made our child keep your secret." Mark flinched. "I panicked when he saw us. I didn't know what to do." "So you damaged him instead? Made him feel responsible for holding our family together?" "That's not fair," Mark protested weakly. "Fair?" The word tasted bitter. "Was it fair to Ethan? To me?" Jenna stood, reaching for me. "Rachel, please, we made a terrible mistake. We can fix this." I stepped back, her touch suddenly repulsive. "There's nothing to fix. You broke everything." The next hour blurred into a cyclone of accusations, explanations, and tears. Mark claimed loneliness, said I'd been so focused on building a relationship with Ethan that he felt neglected. Jenna blamed vulnerability, her failed relationships, her admiration of our marriage turning to inappropriate attachment. Every justification felt hollow, each excuse more self-serving than the last. "I want you both out of this house tonight," I finally said, exhaustion settling into my bones. "You can't just throw me out," Mark argued, a flash of anger replacing his previous contrition. "This is my home too." "It's Ethan's home," I corrected, "and you've lost the right to decide what happens here." "Ethan is my son," Mark countered, standing taller. "The son you betrayed? The child you turned into your secret keeper?" My voice remained level despite the storm inside me. "I've already spoken with Caroline. She agrees Ethan should stay with me until we figure this out." Mark's face darkened. "You went behind my back to my ex-wife?" "Ironic that you're upset about someone going behind your back," I replied. Jenna had remained silent, tears streaming down her face. Now she stepped forward. "Rachel, you're my only sister. Please don't throw away 30 years of—" "You threw it away," I interrupted. "Not me." Something shifted in the air then, the moment they realized I wouldn't be manipulated, wouldn't be swayed by tears or promises or shared history. The power in the room tilted, no longer in their favor. Mark grabbed his keys. "I'll go to a hotel tonight. We can discuss this tomorrow when you're calmer. Take what you need for more than one night," I said, "and leave your house key." His jaw tightened, but he reached for his keychain, removing the key with deliberate slowness before placing it on the table between us. Jenna hadn't moved, her eyes pleading with me. "Rachel, please, we can work through this." Her voice cracked. "We're family." Family. The word hung in the air between us. Family doesn't do what you did. She reached for her purse, hands shaking. "Where will you go?" "I'm not going anywhere," I said firmly. "This is Ethan's home. You are." Her face crumpled. "I never meant to hurt you." "But you did it anyway, for 8 months. That wasn't a mistake, Jenna. That was a choice. Thousands of choices, every single day." As they gathered their things, moving around each other with practiced familiarity that now felt like another betrayal, I stood by the door, a sentinel guarding what remained of my family. When they finally left, the house fell silent. I locked the door, sliding the deadbolt with a finality that echoed through empty rooms. Then, alone in the space that no longer felt like home, I allowed myself to collapse. The sobs came like waves, violent and uncontrollable, until exhaustion finally pulled me under. The weeks that followed moved in slow motion. Ethan and I developed a new routine in a house that felt both emptier and somehow cleaner, as if the absence of secrets had cleared the air. Mark moved into an apartment across town. Jenna left for Seattle, claiming a job opportunity she'd been considering for months. Their relationship imploded within weeks of being exposed, built as it was on the thrill of secrecy rather than genuine connection. Divorce papers arrived with clinical language that couldn't capture the magnitude of what had happened. Irreconcilable differences seemed laughably inadequate to describe the demolition of trust between not just husband and wife, but sister and sister, father and son. Ethan struggled with nightmares, blamed himself despite my constant reassurance. "If I hadn't told you, would you still be happy?" he asked one night, small voice cutting through the darkness. "No, honey," I answered truthfully. "I wouldn't have been happy. I would have been fooled. You gave me the truth. That's a gift, even when it hurts." We started therapy, separately and together. His therapist, Dr. Chen, helped him understand that adults make their own choices, that children aren't responsible for parents' mistakes. My therapist helped me navigate the twin betrayals, the dual grief of losing husband and sister simultaneously. "You didn't just lose 2 relationships," she explained. "You lost your understanding of your past. Every memory is now questioned." 3 months after the confrontation, Caroline, Mark's ex-wife, invited me for coffee. I hesitated, unsure where we stood now that my marriage was ending. "I'm still Ethan's stepmom," I said when we met. "At least I want to be." She nodded, surprising me with her response. "You're the most stable parent he has right now. He needs you." That conversation became the foundation of an unexpected alliance. Caroline and I created consistency for Ethan, coordinating schedules and approaches. Mark's visitation remained limited, his betrayal of Ethan's trust proving harder to repair than anyone anticipated. 6 months after discovery, I found an apartment closer to Ethan's school. The house held too many memories, too many shadows. Moving day arrived with unexpected emotion. Not sadness for what I'd lost, but pride in what Ethan and I had preserved. He helped carry boxes to the moving truck, organizing his room in our new place with careful attention. "Is this home now?" he asked, standing in the doorway of his freshly painted bedroom. "Home isn't really a place," I told him. "It's the people who tell you the truth, even when it's hard." He nodded, wisdom beyond his years in his eyes. "Then we're home." 1 year after Ethan's brave confession, we celebrated with ice cream and a movie, our private anniversary of choosing truth over comfortable lies. "Do you still miss Dad and Aunt Jenna?" he asked, as credits rolled across the screen. "I miss who I thought they were," I answered honestly. "But I'm grateful for who we've become without them." And we had become something stronger, a family built on honesty rather than blood or marriage certificates. Ethan's school project, titled My Hero, sat proudly on our refrigerator, my photo at its center. His words, simple but profound: "A hero tells the truth and stays when it gets hard." Mark eventually moved to Portland for work. Our communication remained strictly about Ethan, clinical and distant. Jenna sent occasional texts that I rarely answered, her apologies feeling hollow against the magnitude of her betrayal. The divorce finalized on a Tuesday morning, a 10-minute courthouse procedure that officially ended what had actually died a year earlier. I felt lighter walking out, as if I'd set down a heavy burden I'd carried too long. That evening, As Ethan and I made dinner in our apartment kitchen, he asked the question I'd been waiting for. Are you still sad about everything? I considered this carefully, stirring pasta sauce as I formed my answer. Not sad exactly. Sometimes angry, sometimes grateful. His eyebrows rose. Grateful? Without difficult truths, we never discover our strength. I didn't know how strong we could be until we had to be. He nodded, absorbing this like the wise old soul he'd become. Truth is rarely painless. Betrayal leaves scars that fade but never disappear completely. But here's what I've learned. The most beautiful thing about broken trust isn't forgetting the pain, it's what you build from the pieces. Ethan and I built something honest, something real, something that couldn't exist without first being shattered. And if you're feeling that quiet voice inside warning you that something isn't right in your relationship, listen to it. The truth will find its way to the surface eventually. The only question is whether you'll be the one to bring it into the light, or whether it will crash into your life when you least expect it. The bravest choice is always the truth, even when it breaks your heart.